Well, good afternoon, everyone. 6 days until Election Day, and 63 days left in the term of the Stoney administration. So I come to you one more time before we have an election, and probably a couple more times before we end our term here today. I want to begin with something that just happened out of the Supreme Court. Today we witnessed another blow to the confidence of Americans and Virginians in the institution known as the United States Supreme Court. The court has shown once again that it is more interested in promoting its far right-wing ideology than in upholding the rule of law. And federal law clearly states that no removals from voter rolls should occur this close to an election. Yet, as we have seen before, the justices appointed by Donald Trump will do whatever it takes to make it more difficult for people to access their fundamental right to vote. Evidence supported by a Virginia court indicates that Glenn Youngkin, our governor, and his voter roll removal operation specifically targeted Virginia citizens, not just non-citizens. Despite this, the Supreme Court has allowed this illegal maneuver to move forward, potentially depriving Virginians of their voting rights, their civil rights. Folks, this is wrong, and it must be called out. If you live in the Commonwealth and have not yet voted, now is the time to confirm that you are still lawfully registered to vote. And don't wait until Election Day, and don't wait until Governor Youngkin takes away your civil rights. Let me be crystal clear here. This decision was politically driven by a compromised Supreme Court with justices handpicked by Donald Trump. And Governor Glenn Youngkin is complicit on this attack on Virginia voters. And again, it is shameful that our governor has resorted to these tactics knowing that Donald Trump will lose the Commonwealth of Virginia on November 5th. This is a sad day for the Commonwealth. I'm switching gears. As some of you all may remember, as a candidate for mayor 8 years ago, I championed an initiative that I would enact in my first 100 days in office, and that was to perform a performance review of every single city agency. And we commissioned a comprehensive performance review in those first 100 days. And that review was released on May 25th, 2017, and was performed by Jim Burke and Linda Pierce, who at the time worked for the Performance Management Group at the Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs at Virginia Commonwealth University. The review revealed, quote, a need for improved financial controls and reporting in finance, better hiring processes and career development and out of human services, streamlined procurement practices out of procurement, and upgraded and integrated technology out of the information technology department. And those four agencies are the pillar of any successful government enterprise, given that they touch each department and office in major ways and are essential to the effective service delivery. Now, my commitment at the time of this report's release was about the fix, and to break down the silos and unnecessary bureaucracy, to create a more cross-functional team that delivers for all Richmonders. And despite the hurdles like a global pandemic and also civil unrest, we remain steadfast on the mission of continuous improvement, of making this city better than it was a decade ago. And I know in my heart, we've done exactly that. However, sometimes you need an unbiased external entity to sort of check your work and assess your progress. And that's why today I'm excited to share that we engaged Jim Burke and Linda Pierce one more time. Earlier this year, we engaged them to assess our progress on the 228 recommendations they made in 2017 and release an updated performance report during my final 100 days as your mayor. Now, before I turn it over to Linda and Jim to walk you through their findings, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to all of our city employees that took the time out of their busy days to participate in this important work. And it's clear that we have made some big improvements over the course of the last 8 years, which you will hear about pretty shortly. We also have some work to do, and which this report will obviously highlight. But this is why we do what we do. And this is why these comprehensive reviews are so important, and it's my hope that this report will help the incoming mayor focus on these issue areas that are most critical instead of reinventing the wheel where progress has been made. So let me again thank Jim and Linda one more time, and I will now offer them the podium.
Thank you, sir. Okay. All right.
Here's the clicker.
Great.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Linda Pierce, my colleague, Dr. James Burke, and as Mayor Stoney said, we were the lead consultants that led a team to do the 2017 performance review. Today we're going to give you a summary of our findings. The complete report will be issued at the conclusion of this press conference, and we definitely urge you to dive into the details of that.
We trust you'll enjoy all 130 pages of it. So, as Mayor Stoney said, in 2017, he commissioned this study, and we had a team with us to explore all the different, to explore the different areas under the purview, which was 19 departments. We did a survey at the time, too, of 35 departments, so that was an electronic survey, but we did the deep dive into the 19. I'm going to go back and forth with my glasses, which is always a hassle. So, in the review, we also did focus groups in that extensive study that we did in 2017. We did some focus groups in public utilities, public works, a few different areas. And in that, we did come up with 228 recommendations. We were surprised by the number of recommendations we came up with only when we were asked to come back and review them. As we say, had we known we were going to do 228, we would have shifted to 50. So it was. And when you look at the recommendations, if you look at the 2017 report, you'll notice that some of the recommendations there span citywide issues and came from the surveys, and so they applied to several different areas. But the deep dive was on the 19 specific recommendations, the 19 departments. So we commend the mayor for asking for a review, because when you've done this work and you have people come back in and look at what you've done, you may not be happy with the results. It's possible. So we appreciate we were actually surprised, because most organizations just don't do that. They don't say, how did we do? Did we accomplish what we set out to do? So we're honored to do this part of the work.
Yeah, I'm just going to go over a quick outline of the report so that when you get it, you'll know what to expect. Pages 1 through 17 is a summary of our results and the core themes that spanned all of the different 19, now 18 departments with the merge of emergency communication and emergency management. We also have a little comment on organizational change, our methodology, things like that. From pages 8 to 130 are sections for each distinct department or office. There'll be a couple of paragraph summary at the top that maybe explains some structural changes like the merging, a little bit about leadership turnover, things like that. And then you'll have verbatim the director's self-report on how they did with the recommendations. So we encourage you, again, to take a look at the full report as you think about your questions and just kind of analyze the results of this.
Okay, just a couple of words. When we look at organizational change, and a lot of businesses do this and government does it. We've been involved in organizational change efforts for many years. What people don't realize is it takes 3 to 5 years typically to affect change. And that's assuming you have consistent, constant messaging. You have one message that goes out over and over and over again. And it requires not just an initial speech or a review, as the mayor requested, but it requires consistent work across the board. So when you look at normal circumstances, 3 to 5 years, when you look at circumstances that we've all been facing over the past several years, we're looking at an extension of that. So COVID time created a whole rift for us. The protests, in the wake of the death of George Floyd, also added tremendously, taxing the resources of the city. So despite all that, we have some good news to report in terms of the number of successes that we have. So the directors were able to implement 56.6% of the recommendations. They found alternative solutions for 12.7%. They did partial implementation 20.2%. One thing to note here is that not every recommendation, you'll see this in a little bit, is one that should be done. In some cases, a consultant could come in, make a recommendation that goes against budget restrictions, that goes against code, or any other thing. So it's important when you look at the 10.5 that were not done, you need to look at each individual item, each individual recommendation, and see if that recommendation actually made sense.
Well, thank you. All right, just a quick note on the methodology that we used. It was a little bit different this time. We had a shorter period of time to do it. So we had 2 virtual orientation sessions, which all of the directors attended at least one, in some cases 2, and we explained to them that we were going to be issuing them an electronic survey with the recommendations for their specific department. There was 4 drop-down menus that they had to pick from. Was this recommendation fully implemented, partially implemented, not implemented, or did they use creativity and come up with an alternate solution to suffice the recommendation? So then we had a narrative text box that accompanied each of those, and it was forced for them to put in some context for how they answered the recommendation so that we could further understand that. As Jim mentioned, we understand when we look back now at what we recommended in 2017, if we had it to do all over again, there might be a few recommendations that we would have tweaked or maybe not even have included in there, but such is life, and we explained to them that if it wasn't pertinent to them, we understood, and we take responsibility for that one. We did not change the wording from the directors in the narrative text box, except maybe to do some clarification, especially with all the acronyms that were in there, and maybe turn some things into bullets or something like that. So it's pretty much 99% verbatim of a self-report.
An area that you might find particularly interesting in the report occurs in the end of each director's statement, where we ask them 3 open-ended questions. And they are, because this would, we want to bring things up to speed a bit from 2017. We said, were there initiatives implemented in your department since January 2017 that were not included in the recommendations? Please specify. Also, please describe some of the major initiatives currently underway in your department, and also what are future initiatives. So you get a sense from the directors about where they are now, what they've done in the past, where they are now, and where they're going. That's very helpful information to my mind. And then we met with each director, either by Zoom or in person, to go through their answers, to go through their responses, to get any clarification, and to get some core themes, because we wanted to find out about other things within the culture of the city. How are things going there? We'll talk about that in just a little bit.
Okay, so the key areas of improvement that we were looking for, as you will note if you have looked at the 2017 report, HR, procurement, finance, and IT were some areas that were creating distress throughout all of the operations of City Hall. This is not unusual in any organization whatsoever, because those core functions support all of the functions of City Hall. That was one that we noted that needed some improvement. When we talked to the directors, we were surprised. We were surprised at how much they're collaborating now, at the number of initiatives that they have undertaken to improve these areas. We'll go into a little more detail, but HR was completely revamped in 2023, and we heard positive responses to that from the other directors outside of HR. They reported that the time frame has really lessened from getting an applicant and onboarding them and providing what they needed in them. So that was really good to hear. Procurement has undergone extreme changes. Some of these were technology driven, but a lot of them really has to do with re-engineering the processes, making them simpler, educating the users how to do it. They've done a lot of outreach there. And again, the P card is a best practice. Yes, we need controls, for P cards, but it is a best practice, and the P card was reported to have significant positive influence throughout City Hall. Same with IT. We'll go into a little detail later, but they have put in a new project management system all the way from the beginning of a project. It has several steps through the end. It includes disaster recovery. It includes security. It includes change management. It includes training to move people from the legacy to the new system. They've also worked in all of these areas to expand the usage of technology systems, the Oracle system, and to expand them specifically in procurement and HR. So that was very, very positive. What we loved the most was to hear that they all are working together. They're collaborating, they're sharing information, they're coming up with joint decisions, and even if it might not have been going your way, everybody understands what went into that data-driven decision-making.
So when we look at the elevation of people in positions too, one thing that I didn't cover on the other slide, filling positions has been very hard. It's been very, very difficult. We work with a number of organizations, and every organization, whether they're in Virginia or other states, will say, we're having a hard time filling the job with qualified people. Doesn't mean that there aren't qualified people getting hired, but it's just harder. So it's just been a little bit more difficult. So we're glad to see that the finance is expanding. We're glad to see that their qualifications are raised. And you should have a lot of CPAs in finance. That makes a lot of sense. As Linda mentioned, the collaboration has been very good. We heard that people are sometimes just getting together, having hard conversations. And I'd like to contrast that with before this administration came in. What they came into was an area that was filled with blame. Blaming other departments, not working together, protecting themselves. That cultural shift, in and of itself, where we can sit down over a hard issue and deal with it, is huge. That's what gets stuff done. So what we saw is that the morale was greatly improved among those we spoke with. And those who were here, and not all of them were, most of them were not in their jobs at the time, but many of them worked for the city. And they said that morale in the city is so much better. Okay? Now, you want to fact check that? The next administration can fact check that with the staff and see if they feel the same way. That's good to do. But one thing we noted that's important, it's not in this slide, but it is in the report, is there's a high level of correlation between what the directors told us in 2017 and what the survey said in 2017. So we can't assume that they're going to be the same in 2024, but the correlation between the two was pretty high. And that does tell us something. It was also nice to hear about the directors talking about how they had helped each other out, how they had helped each other deal with issues. And several of them said this was not the case back when you first came here. So those are good things. Again, read the report. It highlights all 18 agencies. Remember, 2 of the agencies combined, so we had 19 and now 18 in this. So please do take a look in detail at the director's responses.
Thank you. All right, here's some of the major areas from our 2017 report and some progress that we have noted. This is not all the progress, this is just a summary of the progress. Number 1 was processes and procedures. Back in 2017, we heard that they were cumbersome, they were taking a long time, people were unsure of what they were, and we suggested that they be engineered, that some of the major processes be re-engineered, documented, and then third, that the users be educated in how to use those. We also noted that customer service needed to be modeled, not just externally, but also internally. So especially those internal functions, their customers are the other parts of City Hall that are using them. What we saw was a complete restructuring of the HR department, which is now more centralized, but they have partners that go out into all of the different areas. Again, the P card we heard was significant improvement. The IT project management system that I mentioned just previously, people are reporting that that is working very, very well, and there's a lot of transparency in a project as it goes through the IT system. The documentation of processes is occurring in many departments. Several others beside internal functions, I do have to give a shout out. They have various accreditations, as does purchasing. They have various accreditations which mandate that they keep their processes re-engineered and documented on a every few year basis. So they had already done it, but now we're seeing more and more people document it. So significant gains in HR, in procurement, finance, IT, all of them are really working hard to affect these things. In systems and technology, we were concerned about backup systems. We were concerned in investing technology wisely and in educating the users. There's a new ticketing system, which we heard great things about in IT. The project management process that I mentioned, it has disaster recovery. It has they do independent IT audits every year. Every 2 years, they partner with the city auditor to do a separate IT audit. So that's very, very helpful. They expanded the use of NeoGov. That was predominantly in HR. It used to just be used for the front end of the system, and now it tracks the applicant through the hiring process, the onboarding, and they're getting ready to implement a Learn, which is a professional development program. Also, Core ERP, which used to be called Rapids. They've expanded the use of that. And OpenGov for procurement is now starting not just from bid, but all the way through the process to award. So these technology solutions have improved tremendously the efficiency of government.
Unless you get tired of hearing all good things, we will address what is recommended coming up in a little bit. But it is important to cover these areas because the directors have done quite a lot of work, and sometimes the inner workings of City Hall are not the most exciting things to read about, but they're important to how government functions. If you look at two of these categories coming up, culture and communication, people and relationships, these dovetail obviously quite a bit. The bottom line is the happier your employees are, the more they feel valued and respected, the better they are likely to perform. So we want to see that care and concern for the employees. And the employees that we spoke with seem to feel that. Also, the vibe that you get, it may not be super scientific, but the vibe that you get in City Hall is different from the one that we experienced in 2017. So we do say that there is a cultural shift going on. We also cross-check that with the people with whom we spoke. And they were able to contrast 2017 with 2024. Okay? In terms of change, we heard that urgency was just not in the vocabulary of city government. Things would get done eventually. Building a culture where there is some urgency and there is importance was critical. We have seen that happen. So we see new leadership in several agencies that are leading an effort to enhance a sense of urgency, to get things done. And by the way, not one director we spoke with, not a single one, said they were done. Nobody said, yeah, we've done everything, we're good. They've all got a list of things to do. And that's been the message that is consistent, is continuous improvement. And there's no city government that we've ever encountered, or state government, that is done. So there's more work to do. Finally, people and relationships. The offering of, to attract good staff, you have to offer them good things. This final shift into VRS, which was a great win, is really important. The collaborative bargaining agreements, the health clinics for employees, all these things are going to create a feeling of value among employees. These are significant things. These were new to us when we heard about them. I had never heard about health clinics. I live in the city. I didn't know that employees had health clinics. I didn't know the VRS went through. We're very happy about this. So this builds the kind of culture that you want for the city to attract your qualified people. We also heard, for instance, in fire, that people where they previously were trained here and then go to the county are coming back to the city. That's a positive switch. That makes us very happy as well. So when we look at all the recommendations, we'll go through a couple of charts with you and then go through next steps.
All right, so here's a high-level breakdown of the 228 recommendations. As you can see, 129, or 56.6%, were reported to be fully implemented. Alternate solutions, the creativity and the innovation, resulted in 29 of them being adhered to, or 12.7%. 46 were partially implemented, that's about 20%, and 24 at 10.5% were not implemented. And in some of those cases, there were very good reasons why they weren't implemented that the consultants, when they made the recommendation, were not aware of, such as legislative things and statutory requirements and things like that.
Yeah, and as Linda said, in the beginning of the report, we own that section of it in terms of, if you write a recommendation that wasn't ideal, we were the final imprimatur on that degree, on that document. So some of the recommendations rather, they're not really that great. So when we say to a director, Mayor Stoney should come visit you more often, as we say, we should have put it, invite the mayor to come by your department more often. That would have been a good thing. That would have been relevant to the director. So we own that. No report is perfect, and we just want to be clear about that. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Here's what we have, internal functions. Let me just step aside so you can see this. What we're looking at here was the 4 key functions, and I know these fall under one portfolio, so it was a lot of work to do for this. We saw a huge improvement overall in terms of human resources, as Linda mentioned, IT, procurement. Again, all these, the blue lines were the number of recommendations, the green are fully implemented. But again, some of the partial implementations were good, and also some of the alternative implementations were probably better and also fit into the budget for the city.
Okay, this is the public safety portfolio. Again, you'll see there were 42 total recommendations, 27 fully implemented, partially implemented, alternate, and not implemented. So they were very successful in implementing many of the recommendations despite the challenges of the past 7 years.
Finally, or rather thirdly, operations. We looked at public utilities, and again, we know other things fall under operations, but these are the ones that we looked at in 2017. So when you look at public utilities and public works, Mr. Vincent was very positive in terms of public works, 13 out of 13. But public utilities saw a tremendous growth as well in terms of the recommendations that they were given. And again, just to bear in mind for context, when you give recommendations as a consultant and you come back to the organization years later, you're not surprised when things aren't done. You are surprised when things do get done. So we just want to highlight that just from, looking beyond just City Hall.
And here's a portfolio for economic development and planning. Again, we stuck with structure from 2017. One thing I do want to note, it is in the report, but it's not necessarily in the summary. In many of the departments, there's new leadership. And that new leadership has spent a lot of time creating a vision for their various departments or offices, putting forth a strategic plan, working with the staff, getting a lot of professional development. That has certainly occurred in public utilities, social services, many, many others. So again, there's so much more information in the report, and we really encourage you to read all of that.
I know these bar charts are incredibly stimulating here. Yeah. And in terms of human services, we're thrilled to see some significant improvements in social services. As a psychologist by background, mental health workers are really stressed out over these past few years. So the work that's been done in social services and is not widely advertised, but is huge, and they're moving the department forward in many exciting ways. Parks and Recreation Community Services, they were doing very well, except they were struggling back in 2017 with procurement, getting things like bolts and things like that. Now things are so much easier for them. And any department, whether you're going to a city or a state, whenever you're dealing with Parks and Rec, they're usually the most happy people in the world. So it's
They have new facilities.
and new place. So Justice Services, 14 accomplished, or rather 14 given, 12 accomplished. Multicultural Affairs, they had an easier ride of this, but a much smaller department with 4, and OCWB with 17 recommendations and accomplishing 5, mostly alternative solutions and partially implemented. So what do we suggest for the next administration and beyond?
Okay, some key areas for continued progress. Progress has already been made in these areas, but what we're suggesting is keep the gas pedal pushed down on these areas, keep expanding collaboration among the city departments and the offices, getting those teams in small groups so that they can share information, they can share perspectives, and they can make decisions collectively is a much more successful way of operating than keeping things in silos. So keep working on that one. Continue updating your processes and procedures. This is something we recommend that every organization do, and the work here is never done. As soon as you update them, there might be a re-engineering, and you have to keep that current, and educate the users on how to use your processes and procedures. That helps reduce bottlenecks and improves timeframes. Focus on customer service. We're thrilled. Finance just hired someone who's going to be specifically focused on customer service. As Jim mentioned, when we spent a lot of time down here in the past couple of months, and we saw people going into each other's offices and asking for help and saying, what do you need? How can I help you? That internal culture helps everyone, and it also is contagious. So we definitely commend people and say continue on the customer service.
We would recommend to keep setting goals and share those in a transparent manner, set those goals and metrics, share what's been done, share the accomplishments richly. This is important because we need to know as residents what's going on in City Hall, where's progress being made, and where is it still yet to be made. We would like to know those things. And that's why I said we were surprised by all the changes that occurred. These are positive changes for the employees, and that will make for, again, attractive employer. Keep making the city an appealing employer for existing talent and new talent. And I want to emphasize existing talent. There are a lot of people that this administration has brought in who are very effective at what they do. They are working very hard to repair things that were broken. There is no doubt about that. So we're not dismissing that things were not broken, that things were broken. We are saying, yes, and you know what? You've got good people here. So as far as we're concerned, retain this talent. Retain this talent. Finally, the new administration may want to administer a culture survey to all employees to find out, is this accurate? Do we have good data? We would suggest doing that. It's a good thing to do. Mayor Stoney launched his administration with this. We would suggest the next mayor do the same thing. And with that, we have a quote which we think captures a lot of what Mayor Stoney and his administration has been trying to do. And this is about strategic direction.
This is by Michael Porter, who's considered one of the founders of current strategic thinking as it applies to business. He's out of Harvard. The thing is, continuity of strategic direction and continuous improvement in how you do things are absolutely consistent with each other. In fact, they're mutually reinforcing. So we've seen a lot of strategic thinking going on lately at City Hall with those that we talk to. We've seen a lot of continuous improvement. We congratulate you all for all of your hard work, and well done, and we're looking forward to seeing it continue.
Thank you. Do you want to take a question? Yeah, I'll take some questions.
Well, Mr. Burke, Ms. Pierce, thank you so much for that presentation. And now we'll avail ourselves to some questions.
My question is for Mr. Burke or Ms. Pierce. Both of you have said that you have experience, conducting these surveys. Across the board, how many do you estimate that you've done, and how does this measure up?
Sure. I wanted to know how many of these kind of studies have we done, and surveys and all that. We have, an accurate number would be hard to gauge. We have done them in state offices quite a bit. We've done them in many organizations we've consulted with. I would say we've got at least this kind of survey work, 30?
30 to
40?
Yeah, approximately.
Some high amount. And I don't want to be called a liar for that, but a lot. Yeah, good question, thank you.
Graham? Graham with the Malta.
Oh, hey, Graham.
So when you all say retain this talent, what do you mean by that? Are you saying the next mayor should not come in and make personnel changes? Can you repeat the question?
Sure, thank you so much. Should the next mayor come in and make these changes, basically, when we talk about retaining the talent? Yeah, let me be very straightforward about that, Graham. When we do organizational change, and we've been involved in organizational change efforts for many years, both of us together and also separately, what a lot of leaders want to do is break everything and think that if you move people around, it's going to change things. And it's not. What it's going to do is it's going to create a slower response than we have. It's going to tie up hiring decisions. It's going to bring in perhaps people who they may know who may be fine, but for what? For what? So we would suggest for the next mayor, they take time, they evaluate the staff, they be clear about their expectations, they set a timeline, they sit down with each one and say, these are my expectations. And if they match up to that, if they live up to that, then retain them. And if they don't, then you have to address that. So we would suggest, that a lot of time has gone into hiring good people. And I would not recommend changing anybody on the decks right now.
On the P card front, did you all look at how that system is being overseen and how rules are being enforced? Or you just deal with that part of this review?
Sure. About the question about the P card and if the P card system was reviewed and our take on that. I will defer to my finance background, but we do have actually specific background in P card. We had a client who withdrew the P card from everybody at a major institution, and it was a disaster. And so we could speak to a little of our recommendations on that.
But Grant, specifically to answer your question, we followed the recommendations from the report, and in 2017, we recommended that they install P cards. So we did not look at the guardrails that are in place of it as part of our 2024 review. Correct. We were just updating the recommendation, and that one would have been fully implemented, right?
What is the city's position on capital leaving the United District Partnership LLC as we're still working for this partnership and for this project into fruition?
Yeah, the question is about Loop Capital leaving the partnership they had with Tallheimer. Here's the thing. Loop, we are grateful for Loop's participation early on. They helped get the bond sold. But moving forward, this has no impact on the construction of the stadium or on the larger project at large. And so we look forward to full speed ahead on the Diamond District. And we know that Tallheimer solely can handle the project on their own. That's up to Tallheimer and the partnership.
Yeah, I mean, what does that mean for so that's going to be up to Tallheimer?
That's correct. Remember, Tallheimer was selected to carry out the project. The Diamond District Partnership, they were selected to carry out the development of the project. Whoever they add to their team will be up to Tallheimer.
Mayor Stoney, y'all are saying this could potentially serve as a blueprint for whoever comes into this office next. You haven't made a endorsement yet. Who do you think would be the best person to carry this out?
I'm glad you asked that question, because today I'm prepared to tell you that I'm undecided on who I plan on supporting for mayor of Richmond. And here's the thing. You all know I'm a proponent of early voting. And here in Virginia, we have 45 days to early vote before the election. And normally, I would have already voted by now. And I know who I'm going to vote for president. I know who I'm going to vote for the U.S. Senate. I know who I'm going to vote for city council and school board. I know I'm going to vote yes on the referendum. But I don't know who I'm going to vote for mayor yet. And this is a conversation I'm having in my household regularly now. I'm still fielding phone calls from candidates who are running for mayor. And I'll admit, I'm looking for someone who is going to be audacious about the future of Richmond, and someone who's going to be bold and courageous about on a number of different issues facing the city. And I have not heard anyone sort of lay out that audacious vision for the future of the city of Richmond. Yes, what you've heard here, we've pushed the bar higher. And what people I'm hearing are looking for, what are you going to do beyond the bar? And no one has yet articulated. And I watch the debate, I watch the forums, and no one has tickled my fancy yet.
What do you think is missing besides the vision? What are you hoping to hear that you haven't heard?
The question was, what are you hoping to hear that you haven't heard? Well, let me be honest with you. A lot of them have sounded the same. No one has distinguished themselves from the pack. They all agree on mostly what the city of Richmond has already done already. And so what are you going to do beyond what this administration has done for the last 8 years? Everybody's ditto, ditto, ditto. Agree. But what are you going to do beyond what we've already done? Like I said, I've heard a lot of people talk about the paper pushing process of City Hall. I haven't really heard a lot about pushing the envelope. I hear people say, "Oh, we're gonna boost funding for affordable housing." Yeah, we did that. We're going to boost funding for public education. Yeah, we did that. So what are you going to do? That's different than what we've done.
So in order for your, if you were to make an endorsement, we're in crunch time now. In order for it to matter, it would need to happen ASAP. Is what you're saying now, does that mean there will be no official endorsement, or is it still on the table?
The question was, will there be any official endorsement since we are in crunch time at the moment? Well, I'm a student of politics, a student of Richmond and Virginia politics, and there is a certain governor, former mayor who was known for making endorsements the weekends before the election. And in the weekend before the election, I received an endorsement from John Beliles, who was an opponent of mine in 2016. And so an endorsement in the weekend can be very impactful when people show up on a Tuesday. And I thank Mr. Beliles for that endorsement.
So I think one of you all mentioned like the vibe in City Hall is like looking positive and it's going in the right direction.
Yes,
And
correct.
this is more for the mayor, but
Oh.
so I think every candidate is running on some version of we need to shake things up at City Hall, not up to snuff. What do you think explains that disconnect where people in the building think the vibe is good, people outside the building seem to think the vibe is bad?
The question was, there's a difference in the vibes between what Jim and Linda just laid out and in what some of the candidates have been talking about. Graham, I think you have to consider where the candidates might be spending their time during the course of this campaign. Who has been hosting the forums? What have they been asking at the forums and the debates? Are they spending time in areas where people don't have are they spending a lot of time in areas where people are struggling economically, where they've seen improvements and investments in their neighborhoods? Or are they spending a lot of time in the areas where, they have the privilege to show up in the middle of an afternoon and tell you what they think is wrong with the city of Richmond? So consider that. Consider the spaces they're spending their time with, the people they're talking to in those spaces as well. Some have said that this was a change election. My thing is, if this is a change election, then why are people, ringing my phone asking for my consideration as we wind down this campaign cycle?
So you think there is no public appetite among the voters for dramatic change in City Hall?
The question is, you think there's no public appetite for any changes at City Hall? I think every mayoral candidate, if you are lucky enough, honored enough to be elected mayor, needs to put their impression on City Hall, right? I think you have to listen to what Jim just stated, and it was take the time to review the leadership we have here today, and are they qualified, worthy to be a part of a future administration? That's going to be the work of the next mayor. The disconnect that I'm seeing is, if you looked at any of the the private polling internally, which I don't know if they ever show you the issues part. You see the horse race. You never look at the results on the issues. City Hall and services are not the top three issues in the city of Richmond right now. The top three issues in the city of Richmond that people care about is affordable living, affordable housing, public education, and public safety. And rewind 8 years ago, people truly did ring the bell on services because their roads weren't getting paved. The grass wasn't getting cut. Those basic core services were not happening. And I always say, measure what city residents want by what they see when they walk out their front door. So Ms. Jenkins, who lives in Churchill, when she walks out her front door and she looks to the left and she looks to the right, and probably she'll look down. She'll look down and she sees, oh my gosh, there's a pothole right there. Are my streets getting taken care of? Looking to the left and looking to the right, are there drug dealers on my corner? Is there a constant presence that endangers their children or their family when they arrive home? These are the issues that residents care about day in and day out. Now, let me not discount the fact that we have to be more than good at the delivery of services inside this building. When people show up with a customer service issue, we have to be responsive. But there's a difference between customer service issues and actually the core issues that drive this city and make this place a livable place, a place that people are choosing to live in. And on those factors, more funding for public education, more funding for affordable housing, more improvement in both public education and housing, economically in the city, we fare well. The city is faring well. That's the bottom line. And they probably haven't shown you their wrong track, right track in their polling as well. And if you look at the wrong track, right track, the city's on the right track.
And on that note, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.